Hey there, this is an introduction to EarMaster so that you can go ahead and start using the exercises and the structure within this app to develop your ear, but also connect your ability to hear and recognize musical elements and structures, connecting that with sight reading as well. So I'm going to go through a few of the sections that are going to be the most relevant to you, and also some of the settings to make sure that you are setting it up to suit you the best. So the first thing we'll look at are the settings. So you can access the settings via the settings icon, the little cog down on the bottom left, or you can also access it via the plus, the sort of like yellowish plus ... symbol underneath the list of exercises. So either way, you can access it through either of those. And you'll notice when you come in here, these are sort of general preferences for the whole app. So something you might want to look at first is having visible the training modules that are most relevant to you. So you could actually turn off any of the ones that are not going to be relevant for what you're doing. So for example, the ROCM and the ABRSM trainers are for specific exam sort of syllabus that may not be relevant to you if you're not doing those exams. You could choose to go through them because they would be good for skill development anyway, but just to keep things simple, we could turn those off. And if you don't want to do jazz specific workshops, you could turn that off as well, but you might be interested in that. So you can always explore anything you like, but for simplicity's sake, right now, I'm just going to turn off the RCM, ABRSM, and jazz workshops. So we're keeping the beginner's course, general workshops, the vocal trainer, which may be helpful for some singers, although I'll explain a couple of things about that, and then the call of the notes, which I'll also explain more about in a moment. So then you want to go up to the vocal range, and you want to set that to whether you're a higher voice, medium sort of voice, lower voice, where it is in the sort of range of notes that your voice sits. If you've got a particularly high voice, you might choose soprano or even mezzo-soprano. I actually recommend selecting one range lower potentially than your actual comfortable singing range, just because it'll mean that the exercises don't go too high for you. So actually, I'm normally a mezzo-soprano, but I'm going to choose alto because it'll just keep it in a really nice, comfortable range for me, and I won't have to stretch myself too much because these are not really singing-specific exercises, unless, of course, you're doing the vocal trainer. The G clef is going to be your treble clef, so keep that in mind. Probably better not to choose the alto clef because it's going to be a different clef, and when it comes into the reading, relating things to reading notation, it's going to be a different clef than what you're used to. So keep it in the G clef. And, really you could play around with which range you're using. And obviously the further down the list you go, the lower in pitch the exercises will be. So you can always come in here and switch it and change it if you're finding that the exercises are, not quite right for your vocal range. You can also choose a piano, guitar, or bass, or customize it. But I recommend keeping it in a vocal range so that, so that you're using your voice to do the ear training exercises. Notation settings, you can switch that to jazz if you like. I like the jazz one, so I'm going to put it on that. Or you can keep it on classical, which is just going to be your very standard looking notation style. The notation spacing, you want to keep that time proportional because it's going to look the way that it will look in actual music notation rather than fixed space, which doesn't give you the sense of how long the note goes for in the notation. So keep it on time proportional. Don't worry about transposing instruments because it's not likely that's going to be relevant to you. Unless, of course, you do play a transposing instrument and you want to use it for that instrument, but more than likely it's probably not relevant to you. The home screen items we've already done. Other options, you probably don't really need to change any of those, so you can just leave those. The primary instrument preset, best to keep that at piano, unless, of course, you are using it one of those other instruments for another purpose. And a lot of the other settings you probably don't need to worry about unless, again, you are using the guitar or another instrument. Metronome sounds, they're probably all fine. Rhythms, hand clap. You can change the sound for the rhythm exercises if you want, but we're going to keep it on the hand clap. So that's sort of the general preferences that you can set within the app. So now let's have a look at a couple of the sections that are going to be most relevant to you. As you can see now that list of modules has reduced because we've turned some of them off. So that's keeping it nice and simple. Let's go into the beginner's course to start with. If you are a total beginner to music or you are a total beginner to ear training, just start here because it's going to build up your skills and knowledge from absolute scratch, and that's a really good thing to do. Even if you do have a little bit of experience, it's probably worthwhile just going through this anyway, in case there's any gaps that would be worthwhile filling in for you, because when we learn from different sources, sometimes we can have some gaps in our learning, so it will just help to fill in some of those. So you've got an introduction to the course, so we're starting at the very beginning here. I'll just give you a few example exercises in each of these modules. We're going to go next. So you can see it's got a little bit of a explanation that you can read through, welcoming you to the beginner's course. It's got an example of the kind of thing that you're going to learn to recognize and hear through the course. So that example there is really sort of like where you end up at the end of the course, being able to recognize by ear. So this first exercise, so it will just sort of go progressively through the exercise if you just keep on clicking next in this. So we can do that. It also has a link there giving you an option of reading through a little bit of extra background theory if you wish, but you don't have to do that. You will see what you need to add on as you go through. So it's giving you an explanation of the pitch, of highness and lowness of the sound, and it's giving you an example which you can kind of go through a few other examples just to give you a sense of what they're talking about there. Now they're describing what the exercise is going to be. So you're going to be singing in this one. Notes are played and you sing them back. So let's have a little go. They are recommending that you use headphones, particularly obviously headphones that have a little microphone on them. And it is best not to use Bluetooth headphones because there's always a lag with Bluetooth. I'm actually not using headphones at the moment, but you can use a wired microphone plugged into your device with a little microphone on it. Sorry, headphones with a little microphone on it. So let's begin. So this is just a little example. You can see it's got a microphone down the bottom, and you can see it's kind of like pulsating because it's actually hearing the sound that I'm making right now. All that's going to happen, you can see it says melody sing back. Sing back just means you're going to sing back what you hear. Press new question to begin. So new question's over there on the left. And I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, now because I set up the settings at the beginning, it's given me a note that's within my vocal range. If you set your settings to be a lot lower or higher, it's going to give you lower or higher notes. So you can see that, I did the question and I got it right. So you can, if you want to hear it again, you can try that again. Okay, so if you're sort of a little bit off on your answer and you want to try it again, you can do that. So keep that in mind. It's also worth keeping in mind that these exercises are the sound that is played with the piano doesn't go for very long. So if you're working on your pitch and you're getting familiar with pitch matching and you need a little bit more time, you might need to try it. You might need to try it several times. Okay, so just keep that in mind. to make sure that you don't get frustrated with the exercises, basically. Okay, we're going to go back. All right, so that's an example of the pitch exercise. Let's have a little look at the pulse exercises now to demonstrate how they're going to work. We'll look at this first one here, 3.1. So again, a little explanation, some theory reading you can do if you want to. Next, example of explanation of the exercise, and then we're going to go in. So you can see the setup here. We've got a count-in bar. We've got a little ear symbol with the yellow rectangle of bar 1, which is when you're going to be listening to the example that you're going to have to play back. Then there's another count-in bar to help you prepare, and then in the green rectangle, that's when you actually clap back the rhythm. Now, something important to know in these exercises is you can actually change the exercise options as well. So up in the top right corner, you've got the little hamburger menu, and you can change some of these settings. It's probably not necessary to change many of them, but there's a couple that might be worth considering. The first one is play metronome during question. You can toggle that on and off, which will mean that when the example is being played that you're listening to in the yellow rectangle, it's going to actually play that metronome or not during that example. So you can decide whether you want that in there or not. I'm going to turn it off for now, but just keep in mind you can actually turn it on if you need that extra help of having the metronome there to hear the difference between what you're hearing and the beat that's being played with. You can also change the lower instrument to a microphone, so you can actually then clap it in with your hands rather than tapping it on the screen. So the rhythm tapping means that you tap on the screen and it does a little clap for you when you tap on the screen. The microphone is when you actually clap it yourself and it picks up the sound that you're making. It's important to keep in mind that sometimes that can be a little bit inaccurate. So you might want to play around with it and see which one you prefer and how accurate that is for you. I'm going to keep it on the rhythm tapping for now. The rest of them, evaluating the note length is a good thing to do when you're tapping that. So if you change that setting, it's going to change. If you're not evaluating the note length, it's going to just have a clap. If you are evaluating the note length, it's going to have a piano sound so that the note length can go longer. And that will be relevant, obviously, for exercises where you have note lengths that are more than one beat long. I'll turn that off for now. And you can show or hide the claps and so forth. So there's a few options there that you can change. Let's have an example of this now. So I'm going to go new question. We've got the count in. That was the example. And now I'm going to clap it back. Okay, so then it shows me what I did. Because this particular exercise is just about tapping the pulse, it's always going to be the same. And again, you can always try it again if it wasn't quite right. So I'm trying it again. Great. Okay, I'm going to go back now. So that's the pulse exercises. As you move on, you've got all these different ones: pitch notation, duration, tonality, all of that. That will all get explained for you as you go on. But basically, you've got pitch, you've got pulse, and then you've got relating the pitch to notation, and then you've got relating the pulse to notation as well, to sight reading, and going through. It's sort of like a mixture of ear training, applied theory, and connecting that with music notation. So it's really a nicely rounded approach to teaching ear training. Okay. So that's the beginner's course. We're going to go back. We won't go through too many exercises because it'll take us too long. Let's have a quick look at the general workshops. So in here, you've got general exercises you can do on all of these categories: interval comparison, interval identification, interval singing. Interval singing and identification are really great for developing the ability to hear melodies and work out melodies by ear. Chord identification, chord inversions, and chord progressions. are going to help you work out chord progressions by ear. So listening to a song on a recording and working out what the chords are that you're hearing. Scale identification is going to help you work out the key that you're in. Rhythm, sight reading, clapback, rhythm dictation, and error detection is going to help you work out the rhythms that you're hearing. So these are all obviously very ear-based. They're not so much related to notation, which is really great. And then you've got your melody sight singing, which will relate to notation, melody sing back, and melodic dictation. Again, the dictation will relate to the notation. So let's just have a really quick little example. We might look at the rhythm clapback. This is an important thing to experience. So, and in this example, we've actually got a count-in bar. We've got the example bar in the yellow, count-in bar, and then the clapback bar in the green. So it gives you time to clap it back. So, it gives you time to prepare to clap it back after you've heard it. So that's that example, which is very much like the pulse one that we had a look at the start. So I'll go back. I'll actually, it's the call of the notes that has something different. So we'll look at that later. Maybe we'll look at some interval identification first. So to start with, it starts very simple, just identifying the difference between two intervals, and then it will progress from there. So let's see what this sounds like. So to start with, you're going to have to guess. But then as you go, you will start to hear the difference. So I know that's a major second, so I'm going to put that in. And you're telling the difference. Now that one sounded closer, so we're going to look at that. So again, these things take time to start to recognize, and that beginner's course is going to build up what you need to be able to do these exercises. So I'm just giving you an example of what these look like, but definitely if you're starting from scratch, you'll want to start with the beginner's course because it's going to help set you up for these. Let's have a look at the melody sing back one. So we'll begin that one. So we're establishing the key, so it will give you a sound to establish the tonality or the key that we're in. It's going to give you the first tone, then it's going to give you an example, and then you have to sing it back. And this is all going to be back to back. So let's have a look at what this looks like. Okay, good. So it did give me enough time to sing all of that back, which is great. So let's try another question. Na, na, na. Okay, great. So that one's pretty straightforward. Let's have a look at chord identification. So this is starting with major and minor, and then it will progress from there. So again, you just have to tell the difference between major and minor. Okay, so it's giving you the full chord one note at a time. Okay, let's try the next one. Okay, so you start to hear the difference. Is it a darker, sadder sound, or is it a brighter, happier sound? Darker and sadder. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward because there's only two options. These chord identification exercises will progress the more as you work through them. So it's good that it starts simple. So that's your general workshops. Really great to explore all of those, and you get a broad perspective on the different skills of hearing intervals, chords, scales, rhythms, and melodies. Okay, so let's have a look at call of the notes now. This is an important one to get oriented to because it's a little bit different to some of the other ones. So we've got our welcome, explanation of what you're going to be doing, first exercise, explanation of that. Let's have a little example. So with this one, we are going to, it's going to establish the key. It's going to give you a couple of count-in bars. Then it's going to give you some notes, and then you're going to have to sing it back straight away. So I'll give you the example. 2 bars counting. We might pause that there. So as you can see, it's a continuous call and response. So it gives you an example, you sing it back, and then it's going to go straight into a new example. That will become challenging when the examples are more complicated. So you'll start to have to get the sense of that four beat sort of time period that the example will be played to you. And then you need to sing it back starting right from beat 1. So there's no time for you to kind of think about it. You have to be ready to sing it back. So that's how the call of the notes exercises are a little bit different. Let's have a look at the rhythm clap back. This is also where it gets a little bit more challenging. So we'll begin that one. And again, you have to clap back the rhythm right on beat 1. So there's no time to wait. Let's have a look. Okay, so as you can see, it's just continuous. And sometimes the rhythm goes right up to the last half beat of the bar, which means that you have to jump right in on beat 1 immediately after that. So you've got to listen all the way to the end of that bar, right up to the last half beat, and then be ready to play it back straight away. So that's when it gets a little bit challenging, and it might take a bit of practice to to get used to that. So I just wanted to demonstrate that. So that's an example. To not make this video too long, I've given you an example of the beginner's course, general workshops, and call of the notes. Just quickly with the vocal trainer, you might want to use this at some point if you're doing singing, at the point where you've really worked on the pitch matching in the beginner's course. So the pitch modules in the beginner's course, and to make sure that you can actually do the vocal trainer, because it requires a level of basically just being able to sing a scale and to be able to hear a scale and sing a scale to start with, like from the beginning, and then from there it progresses. So if you are just at the very beginning of singing and you're still working on pitch matching and pitch awareness, I would recommend not doing that to start with, and work on the pitch in the beginner's course. And then once you've sort of gotten to that fundamental level of pitch awareness and pitch matching, then the vocal trainer could be useful to you. So that's a very general kind of introduction. Just make sure you can explore and move around and try some different things. If something doesn't really if something's too difficult, then come back to the beginner's course and just keep working through that. But if you find that a bit too easy, then you could feel free to move through some of the exercises in the general workshops or in Call of the Notes, and see how you go. It can be really fun working on ear training. So enjoy and explore, and good luck.